Good morning. All right. Good morning. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning ERUVIN Daf Kuf. We're going to start on Daf Tzadik Tesamad Beis by the Mishnah towards the end of the Amid. Like we mentioned already yesterday, this Mishnah is going to teach us two laws pertaining to a tree on Shabbos. We're going to chazer the rule that Dirosh Tashmish Avir, that if you have a place of residence whose main function isn't for people to live in there, but for people who are in there to supervise what's happening out there, like a guard's hut, and uchadoima, that there is a similarity over there to the karpav shelo yukaf ledira, that if it is larger than Beis Osayim, then you may not midrabanan carry in there. We're going to be learning about the isur of ishtamshus be'ilan. We're going to learn that if you have a root of the tree that's protruding above the ground, if it's within 3 tvachim from the ground, it's still considered ground, and you could be mishtamish with it. And we're going to have very interesting scenarios where you have a root that goes up, it goes above 3 tvachim, then it makes a zaturn, and then it goes down below 3 tvachim. We're going to have a machlokes whether you can use that second part that's now lower than 3 tvachim. Well, it's lower than 3 tvachim. But on the other hand, there's a svara that the kiven, the mekoyach isur ka'asi, that when something is emanating from something that's prohibited, it in itself also is prohibited. We're going to chazer some laws that we have in Zevachim regarding the blood applications from different karbanos, some of which one blood application is enough, some of which you have to have shtayim shehin arba. What happens if these two bloods gets mixed together? There's an issue of Bal Toisev, there's an issue of Bal Tigrat. So whatever you do, you're doing something wrong. Either you're sprinkling more than you have to or less than you have to. We're going to learn about Esadoi Chaloisa. We're going to learn about the concept that an active violation is worse than a passive violation. Amazing. We're going to have on Daf Kuf Amid Beis a question whether one is allowed to walk on grass on Shabbos or not, because you might be uprooting grass. At the end of this whole sugya, we're going to understand that Lashitas Rab Shimon, that Davar She'ein Eschavin is okay, then the whole thing is a non-problem. Obviously, the sugya is not according to the Shita of Rab Shimon, and from there we're going to go into a substantial amount of Agadata. Hopefully we'll have enough time for this. We're going to begin with the Isur, Asur Lachuf Esishta Ledvar Mitzvah, that a man is not allowed to force his wife into marital relations. We're going to learn about a question whether a wife petitioning for marital relations, is that a positive thing? Is that a not positive thing? And ultimately, we're going to learn about the 10 curses that Chava was cursed with. Perhaps there's going to be yet 3 additional curses, and the various behavioral, ethical laws that we could learn from the animal kingdom, and much more. Good. So, we are up to Daf Tzadik Ches Amid Beis, Tzadik Tes Amid Beis, right? 4 lines before the bottom of the Amid, by the last Mishnah in the Amid. Straighten this out a bit. All right. Says the Mishnah, if you have a tree whose branches at a certain point, they go down and they form some sort of cover over the ground. So if you can imagine a very large tree and the edge, the ladder, the more distant parts of the branches beyond the trunk, they begin to weigh down, they begin to come down, and you end up having underneath these branches, you have a perfectly enclosed area. The area is more than dalet by dalet. The height of these branches, if you were to look at them vertically, is 10 tefachim or more. So says the Mishnah that that if the branches don't have to touch the ground, but they have to come within the lavud rule of the ground. That means if there is less than 3 tfachim from the edges of the branches till the ground, which means it's touching the ground, you have bona fide mechitzos, and then metaltal and tachtov, you are allowed to carry underneath these branches. Obviously, there are many pratim over here. If the branches are only in that position when a ruach mitsuya is not even blowing, but if a ruach mitsuya were to blow, it would to lift the branches up, that would not function. But these branches will remain in place even if a ruach mitsuya. So that's the first rule of the Mishnah. Rule number 2 in the Mishnah, that shirashav gavoyim in haaretz gimel tfachim, that if the roots of the trees, not the trunk, and we know that there's an isur midrabanan to be mishtamesh be'ilan. Being mishtamesh be'ilan means not that you can't touch the tree, but you cannot use the tree. You can't climb a tree. You can't lean on a tree. When it comes to halachas regarding leaning, leaning means that if I'm leaning on something and if I were to take that thing away, I would fall down. That's called halachic leaning. You may not do that to a tree. That includes the root if the root is protruding 3 tvachim or more above the ground. And therefore, one example of ishtamshus be'ilan is you may not sit down on the branch. Okay, the Gemara begins referring to the first din in the Mishnah, right, that you may use the branches of the tree as a bona fide mechitza under which we're saying you have a reshus hayachid. Amar Afuna b'reida Rabbi Yeshua, but there is a limit. Ein metaltal and boy yoser bebeis osayim. Similar as we have by the karpav shaloihu kaf ledira, that midrabanan, if it's larger than beis osayim, it has a din of a carmelist, meaning you can't carry inside of it. Here also, this is not a karpav shaloihu kaf ledira. Let me word it that better. Even if the tree was planted, you know that this tree eventually will have huge branches, and you want it to be able to live under the branches. So it was planted ledira, doesn't matter. If the area under the branches is more than beis osayim, you may not carry in there. Ma'itama daf kuf mishum dahava dira shetashmish la'avir. Dira shetashmish la'avir means that when you have a residence. Now, it's like Rashi says, if people always live in there, then it's a proper dina. But if people sometimes live in there, like a guard's booth, and even when they're living in there, it's not that they are in there to use the inside of it. Why are they bechlal in that area? They are there to guard the outside field. And you're not there the whole time. And the rule is, second line from the top of the Amid, the whole dira shetashmish la'avid ein metaltal involved if it is larger than beis sosayim. And the same will be regarding the under the noiv of these trees. Okay. Now, it's going to get very interesting over here. Shirashav gavoyim min haaretz v'chulei, says the Mishnah, you may not sit down on the roots. The isur of ishtamshus be'ilan doesn't only mean the ilan, it means also the roots of the ilan. And yes, if it's beneath under 3 tvachim from the ground, it's considered ground. The moment it's 3 tvachim or more, it's considered ilan. So now, says the Gemara, Itmar was stated, guys, if you can imagine this, or maybe we can have a picture, this is a great picture. So if you look at this picture on the screen, or for the web audience, you have a root that's coming up from the ground and it's going upwards. So we're going to call this section, the first section, the closest to the tree, before it hits 3 tvachim, we're calling that section Aleph. No one is debating that section is called ground. And the Mishnah says you can sit on it, you can use it, you can lean on it. Then it keeps on going higher. The section that goes 3 tvachim and over, we're calling that section B of the Shoidish. That for sure may not be used. That's what the Mishnah says. Asur lishtamish, even by the root. What happens if at a certain point the root itself makes almost a 180 turn, it turns, it bends downwards, and it actually descends beneath the 3 tvachim. So that is what we are focusing on. We're calling that section Gimel. So say, in other words, first it goes above 3, and then that would, Aleph goes into base, and now L'toich Shloisha goes into Gimel. The question is, we're only focusing on, can you use Gimel? Rabba Amar Mutter Lishtamish Bohen, because it's beneath 3. Rav Sheshes is the one that innovates, and he says, Asher Lishtamish Bohem, as I'll explain in a moment. Says the Gemara, Rabba Amar Mutter Lishtamish Bohem, because the whole Pachas Megimel, the Ara Arahi. I don't care that it's coming from a part of the root that is above 3. So what? This Gimel is under 3. However, Rav Sheshes Amar Asher Lishtamish Bohem, because the Kiv and the Mikayach Isur Kaasi, since they emanate from a prohibited section, I know that Gimel is also coming from Aleph, but Gimel is coming directly from Beis. So therefore, Asurin, it in itself carries with it, is imbued with the Isur, even though it is under 3. And now the Gemara is going to say the following. Okay? Now, what the Gemara is going to do is do the best it could to make the picture that we had on the screen. So these are the words that we're using. This is a repetition of our case, giving a written illustration, a written picture. The Damud Kemishu Nisam, that if the roots are shaped like a mountain, if you can go back to the picture that we had before, no, I don't even need that. Shaped like a mountain can be the first pic we had up. That's the meaning of shaped like a mountain. A mountain is like, it has two sides, two slopes, right? Aleph is slope to the right or slope to the left. Gimel is the slope to the left. This is just a way of the Gemara illustrating this picture. Which means, so like this, Desalkin la'elam asurin, what is above 3, section B, the tip of the mountain is for sure asur. The nachasin l'satoi, the part of the branch that did not even go above yet, which is what we call section Aleph, that is sharu. This is just illustrating this machlokes. Litzadadin, Litzadadin refers to section Gimel. That is where you have the plukta that Rabba v'Rabsheishes. Very good. Weiter says the Gemara, v'chein anigra. Anigra is a tree that's standing in a ditch. Now here's the word, Chevra. If a tree is standing in a ditch, picture is not that great, but you will use this picture. There's a height to the ditch. If you're standing outside the ditch, there are certain parts of the tree, there are 2 sides of the tree that only become visible when they go higher than the ditch. There are certain parts of the tree that are visible from when they come out of the ground. The areas that are visible from when they come out of the ground, there's no question, you measure 3 tfachim. The moment you hit 3 tfachim, boom, ilan asur lishtamish be'ilan. The question is, how are we to view those 2 sides of the tree that are not visible only after they go above the ditch? Do I get to count 3 tfachim above the ditch, and only afterwards do I say now asur lishtamish, which will be shitas Rabbah? But since Rab Sheishes has this svarim, that anything that comes, that was his word, right? Kiven de mikoyach isur kaasi asurin. You're going to extend the kiven de mikoyach isur kaasi, that since some of it is visible already inside the ditch, all of it is taking nourishment from that same place. So even though the sides that are hidden by the walls of the ditch, only you should only begin counting 3 tfachim only when you leave the ditch, but the mikoyach isur kaasi, so they are asurim. That's called the chen. So there they will also have the machlokes. And the chen, the next case, the third case will be Keren Zavius. Keren Zavius will be even a greater chiddush. Keren Zavius is if there's a tree that's mamish imbued, it's leaning against the corner, and here more of it is covered. You can almost argue, depending how narrow the corner is, that more than 50% is covered. Doesn't make a difference. Okay, so like this, the side that's exposed, there's no debate over here. Like if you're looking at a picture, the side of the tree that you could see, that side, you go from the ground, you hit 3 tfachim, asur leishtamish. The question is, what about the sides of the tree that only become visible when they go above the walls? So here again, Rabbah is going to hold those parts, you count 3 tfachim. 3 tfachim within the wall, then you are allowed to be mishtamish. Rab Sheishes says, since some of it is already asur lower down, all of it is taking nourishment from that area, the mikoyach isur kaasi, so all of it is asur. Now, guys, what's not spoken, but what is obvious, we gave 2 examples. We gave 3 examples. But I'm saying the latter 2 was 2 sides of the tree were exposed. A third side of the tree is exposed. What's going to happen if only one side of the tree is covered? There, even Rabbah is going to be moida that we count from the ground, as we'll see in a moment. But let's read inside. Says the Gemara, there was a palm tree that Abaya owned, and Vahava Solik be Puma. How beautiful is that? It extended upwards through the skylight in Abaya's house. So you had a tree in a house. Here again, guys, we'll now go to the roof. Same question. Do we say that the first, within 3 tfachim from the floor of the roof, That's called part of the roof, lavud. Or do we say that's Rab Sheshes, that given the mikoyach isur, same thing. So Asal Kameh Rabbi Yosef, and he said, Shara, you are allowed to use the part of the tree we're speaking about for the one who's on the roof, that's within 3 tfachim from the ground of the gag. This lochayt is like Rabbah. And indeed, Amalei Ravacha Bar Tachlifa, the first white line, the Shari Loch, whoever said it's okay, that's because Kerabah Shari Loch. That's because they're following Rabbah. And the question is, why was that statement even needed? Pshita. So the Gemara says, no. One might have thought that Afilu L'Rab Sheshes, maybe, since Beisa Kamandam Ali Dami, for other areas in Halacha, including Hilchai Shabbos, guys, we already learned that we can consider the entire house as full. Guys, you remember that? This is about an item that's flying through at a Shus HaYachid. Without repeating all the dinim, there is a concept that there are areas in Hilchas Shabbos where we say that we view the house as if it's filled up. And if that would be the case, then maybe let us halachically view, at least from the perspective, from the Gag dwellers, that all of the tree that's in the house is covered. And then even Rabsheshus, maybe Ulishtamish B'Pachas Megimel Samach L'Gag. So Kamash Malon, that Rabsheshus would also say that you may not use any part of the tree protruding above the gag because it's the mikoyach isur kaasi. And the heter that Abaye was given was only because we follow the shita of Abaye. Now the Gemara is going to bring our Mishnah. Tonight we learned in our Mishnah, the end of the second white line, asks the Gemara, if the Mishnah is not speaking about a shoyresh that's bending over and extending down, if the Mishnah is not speaking about a section gimel, if we're simply speaking about a normal root that's beginning to come up, so the Gemara says, Pshita, why do we even need a Mishnah? We already know there's the Isser of Isser Ishtamshus Be'ilan. We learned so much about the concept of lavud. Okay. Elad Luchurat means for the Mishnah to be a Chiddush, Elalav Afagav the Hadri Kipe, even if it's bending downwards, even section gimel, since it is within 3 Tvachim, you are allowed to use it. Right? I take that back. If it bends downwards, the Mishnah says you may not use it. The Mishnah says you may not sit. You may not sit even in section Gimel. Even in section Gimel, that will be Taka Chiddush. Because since section Gimel is coming from section Beis, given the Mikoyach Isur Kaasi, the Mishnah is collaborating Rab Sheshes. This is going to be a Kasha and Abba. So the Gemara says, Loi. Lo'ilam, the Mishnah is the Loi, Hadri, Kipe, that it's not extending downwards. And V'hakamash Malan, there is a Chiddush, that Afagav the Tzidei Echad Shavala, it's like we mentioned above, the 3 cases we gave, especially the second and the third, was that 2 sides of the tree is covered by the ditch, or it was in a corner, more of it was covered. They're all L'Rabba. L'Rabba, we still say that the parts that were covered by the wall, that side, you could be mishtamish pachas migimel above the wall. That's because a substantial amount of the tree was covered. But if you have a scenario where only one side of the shoydish is covered, like you have here in the picture, it's just a concept, and all else was exposed, even Rabbah is going to be maida that you don't get to use the exposed part. And by saying that at least over there, you only begin counting from when it gets revealed. No, we go here after the vast majority of the shoydish, you count from the ground. And the moment you hit 3, like in the picture you can see over here, that even though people that are standing on the right side, they should start counting 3 from much higher. No, they have to start counting the 3 from the lowest area, because 3 sides or more were exposed, and that is the chiddush of the Mishnah, so it does not collaborate Rab Sheshes, it does not refute Rabbah. Okay, another couple of details, same concept. Tana Rabbanan, Shar She'ilan, the roots of a tree, Shegavayim in Aretz Gimel Tvachim. And if all of them are higher than the ground 3 Tvachim, simple. Oy or Shlema, next picture, Sheyesh Chalal Tachteim Gimel Tvachim. Or, you have to just be able to imagine this, that there is a opening in the ground 3 Tvachim. Guys, turn your face to the side. This is part of the fun, or make alachayim. So how do you view this? You view that part above 3. Again, it's only tzidlei achas, even Rabba's moida, because since the majority of it is already exposed with 3 tvachim, it's called ilan. And here's the rule of Isur Ishtamshus Be'ilan. Lefisha Oilan Be'ilan, you can't climb. It began with climbing. It's interesting how this grew a beard. Climbing a tree was Asur because you might inadvertently koitzer. You might break off a branch. Very similar to the Isur of not riding an animal. There you might break off a branch to use as a whip for the animal. But Chazal didn't only Asur climbing a tree. They added, you can't climb a tree. They went further, you can't suspend yourself from a tree. Parenthetically, just to quickly review, suspending yourself is also only directly from the tree. Furthermore, we learned in Shabbos, and I think we also learned in ERUVIN, we learned in ERUVIN also that sidei ilin is also also. That means that if I have a tree and I have a nail or hook going out of it, for me to hang the hammock on the hook, I can't do that on Shabbos. But if the hammock was already hung, and the question is, can I sit in the hammock? That's called sidei tzidin. Hammock is that swing. Many people connected to trees. Oh, it's the tree is asur. Even something that's in the tree. Sidei ilin is asur, lishtamesh. But sidei or sidei tzidadim is mutter. We learned the detail as long as the tree doesn't shake. And more, not only can you not hang yourself, you can't even lean on the tree. Now, leaning doesn't, how do you define leaning? Halachically, leaning means that if you were to remove the tree, you would fall. That's called leaning. It's like when you stand Shemona Esrei. What happens if you're elderly people? They have a standard. Can they rest their arms? Yes, they could. Leaning only means if they're leaning so much that if you remove the standard, you fall. That's called leaning. That you may not do to a tree. Now, furthermore, the Mishnah, the Brayso adds the following: that actively there's active violation, there's passive violation. Even passive violation is prohibited. You may not even go up on the tree Friday. The Yeshiv Sham Kolayim Kulik and we sit there Shabbos. Who would want to do that? It's just a concept. In other words, you may not benefit of the tree even if it's only passively. Gavaldik. And now this says the Brayso, Echad Ilan, all of the above is not only by a tree, but also the Echad Kol HaBehemam, same Gzeira. Once you can't ride an animal because you might break a branch, koitzim. But then you can't lean on an animal. If you are already sitting on an animal, you can't remain there the whole day. However, the Gemara, the Brayso wants to make it clear that climbing a tree is not because we want people to relax on Shabbos and it demands a certain amount of physical exertion. We don't care about that here. But if you have a boiler pit, shiach a ditch, ma'ara cave, together or a fence, metapas va'oila, metapas v'yoyed, you can climb up and climb down even if they're 100 amas tall or 100 amas deep. No, this just points out it's not about the schwitzing. It's not about, you can't do something that's very physically, it takes a lot of exertion. It's not about that. It's a Isur D'Rabbanan, like we mentioned, all from a chash that you're going to uproot a branch from the tree. Now, the problem is, Tanach says, it says that if you went up on the tree, then you can go down on Shabbos. The Tanach that says in Brayso number 2, Asur Leide, you're not allowed to go down, similar to the one that we just learned. So the Or says, like Kasha, one solution will be, if you went up during the day, then what? Then you did not violate going up, then you could go down. But if you went up during night, during Shabbos, so going up was in violation, then you may not go down. Same another answer. Both Braysos can be speaking about you went up when it was dark. However, when you went up, so they let you go down. You forgot that you can't go up on a tree on Shabbos. Amazing. And nevertheless, there is taka machlokes, but this is a larger machlokes, and that is whether we say konsu shoygig atu mezid komiflagi mar savar, that goes to the second brayso, right? That you can't go down, which is also like the first one we just learned, the Tanach Rabbanan, that konsinon umar savar loy konsinon. Very good. Omar Rafuna berei de Rav Yeshua. That these two braysos, could you go down? Could you not go down? Let's put aside the konsinon shoygig atu mezid. Maybe, don't forget, there's another aspect just to speak it out, that if you don't go down, that means that you are remaining on the tree, you are de facto being mishtamish be'ilan. It's like a lose-lose. Okay, so you won't go down. But it's not that since you're not going down, you're not violating. I can argue if you don't go down, you're violating the whole Shabbos, ishtamshus be'ilan. Down, it's like ripping off a Band-Aid. Now you're going down, but then you're over with it. But on the other hand, the violation of remaining on the tree is passive. If you go down, then you are actively violating Ishtamshus Be'ilim. So active versus passive. You get it? Doing a mitzvah, doing a violation, that is l'chu'ura connected to the following machlekes tanoim. And let's quickly review some rules that we have in kachim. Different karbanos have a different amount of dam that has to be sprinkled, thrown, applied to the mizbeach. We're speaking about karbanos whose dam is put under the chut sikra. We're not speaking about karban chatos, that's nitanan lamayla takan all the 4 karbanos, but the bloods that are put lamata, you have a b'choir and a meiser and a pesach, as we should say every day in the morning, that there is one application, and then you have the oila and a asham and a shlamim and a toida, that it's called shtayim shehin arba. Now here's the problem. Says the Braisa, blood from karbanos that only need one application. What happens if if it got mixed with another, a bechar got mixed with a meiser, or my bechar got mixed with your bechar? That's not a problem. We don't say that each application has to be from a standalone carbon. No, if the rules are the same, zum gesund, then you nasnu b'matana achas, and it covers both karbanos. Likewise, karbanos that are matan dalid, the blood got mixed with another carbon or with other karbanos that are matan dalid, it's all good. Is yinasin b'matan dalid. However, what is the issue? What happens if matan arba b'matan achas? You have a bechor, the dam of a bechor got mixed, let's say, with the dam of an oilon. What do you do? What's the issue? Whatever you do is you're going into a problem. The pasuk says in the A, loy soisiv v'loy sigra. And as we call it in Chazal, we say there's an issue of bal toisiv and bal tigra. So whatever you do, you're doing a violation. So there's a machlekes tanoim, and each one will have to explain why his solution is the better. Nothing is ideal, but it's the better than the other. Rabbi Eliezer says that you nosnu b'matan dalid, that you should. Now, matan dalid will mean l'chayre that you're violating, right? Bal toisiv, because the one that only needs one, you're putting another 3 times. So look inside the Rashi, 6 lines under the Gemara, at the end of the line, Yinaslim matan arba, the kosavar, because Rabbi Eliezer holds, says Rashi, that kum asay mitzvah adif. You have an obligation to put the one that demands dalid. Because the avar regarding the blood of the bechar and bal toisiv. So here Rabbi Eliezer holds, listen to this, guys, you have to put 4, but putting 4 is also a violation of bal tigra, a bal toisiv, because you're putting the bechar 4 times. So now, guys, I know that Rashi writes chatas. Everyone jumps on this Rashi, because if taka the dam of a chatas gets mixed in, then this whole brais is irrelevant, because here we have a whole other issue. The dam of a chatas has to be put lamaila. Remember that? The dam of an oil has to be put lamata. And that's something that's essential. You may not mix it. So Rashi means, that's what they say, he means an asham. Al karanois in plural. So the dachi, so the esse is doichaloisase. Okay. Even when you use esse doichaloisase, you can still argue the other way. Let's go back. Keep your finger on Rashi. We're 5 lines in the bottom of the Amud and Rashi, and go back into the Gemara. Go back into this Mishnah or Baraisa. Now what? That Rabbi Yeshua says, Yinosnu b'matona achas. Punkt verkehrt. Only apply all of it b'matona achas. Says Rashi, Rabbi Yeshua emim Yinosnu b'matona achas, because even the kaimala, he goes like this, that even those karbanos that should have had his blood applied more, if you only applied it once, b'diavad kiper, so he says, why should you violate? Hached, since the loy efsher, you can't put it 4 times because you have the dam of the bechar in there. So samchin and Allah fil lechatchila. So then only apply it once. And what do we benefit? We benefit that we don't do bal toisiv. V'im yishum bal tigra again the chatos. So he says, here's the main line. That's the connection. He knows whatever you do, you're doing something wrong. So here, let's kid the Ka'amar time. I'm reading Rashi. The Gemara is going to repeat these words. We're reading Rashi 3 lines from the bottom of the Amud. That's the link between our sugya. That mutev sheyei aked bal tigla me'elav, not throwing, and the oil needs 4 times. It's like a bal tigra, but you're violating it by a non-action. You're not throwing. A non-action violation. That's better then throwing it 4 times, which is bal toisif on the dam of the bechor, biyadayim. In other words, we're not going into he's not denying the eser doicha loisasa aspect. What he is saying is that whatever you do, either you're going to violate bal toisif or you're going to violate bal tigra. So what do we take into account? How am I violating it? Biyadayim, through action or through non-action? And we always will opt for a non-action violation. Beautiful. Back inside the Gemara. This is really, Rashi quoted the words that will have Vaitan in this back and forth. Amar loy Rabbi Eliezer. This is to Rabbi Yeshua. Harehu over al tigra. So Rabbi Yeshua tells him, okay, I get it. What, do you have a solution? Rabbi Yeshua, Harehu over al toisif. So first each one says what the other one is doing wrong. Now each one has to defend themselves. So Amar Rabbi Eliezer, that loy omru, that what? That there is a bal toisev, ella kishuhu ba'atzmai. That means if you were to have only dam b'chor, then you can't put dam b'chor more than matana achas. But here you have it mixed with an oila, with an asha. Amalei Rabbi Yeshua, same thing. Leinemer bal tigra, ella kishuhu ba'atzmai. And v'oidam Rabbi Yeshua, this is what Rashi quoted, that kishanosata, when you apply it 4 times, you're over bar toisiv biyadayim. You're doing something. You have also dam b'chor in there. Avarta al bar toisiv ve'asisa ma'isa biyodecha. Kishaloi if you will only put everything matana achas, so you're right. So the asham is bal tigra, but you didn't do it through a non-action. Avarta al bal tigra, but v'lo yasisa ma'isa biyodecha. Nevertheless, Rabbi Eliezer. 1 second. That's the end of that. I think it's a baraisa. So much discussion back and forth. How is that negate to our sugya? Yes, it is. We're speaking about 2 baraisas. If you are already on the tree, can you go down? Same thing. Whatever you do is a problem. Staying on the tree is a shtamshus be'ilin. Going down is a shtamshus be'ilin. The difference l'chayra will be staying on the tree is a passive shtamshus be'ilin. Going down is you're going down. You're actively. Oh, so which one should we do? Maybe that's the machlokes. So says the Gemara. This is the Gemara. Rabbi Eliezer, the Amar Hassan, kum asay adif. So hachinami yered. Now, why should you go down? Interestingly, so Rashi says here in the Havamina that going down, I know is a isur, but going down is a mitzvah also. Look inside the end of the 3rd line before the bottom. Hachinami yored. Tahach yerida mitzvahi. You can argue with that. It's not exactly a mitzvah. It's just that you cannot stay on the tree. But we're going. That's a mitzvah. Right? So evahadin mishtamish, you're doing an isur. Even though you're going down, you're violating, but it's much better than staying over there. Okay, because doing a mitzvah, that's Rabbi Eliezer. What does Rabbi Eliezer holds? Do the mitzvah, do a mitzvah. However, back inside the Gemara, Rabbi Yeshua, the Amar, who makes this difference, no, that a sin through action is worse than a sin through non-action. Hasam shave al taisa adif. So here also, whatever you'll do is a sin. Don't go down. Because not going down is a violation through a non-action. Let Rabbi Eliezer do the mitzvah, go down. Let Rabbi Yeshua stay on the tree. Maybe that's the machlokes of these 2 Tanoim, says the Gemara. Nisht. No. Dilma will argue loihi. At kan lekam Rabbi Eliezer Hasam. Because kumasay adif, that's taka, because matan, at least for the oila, for the asham, there was a mitzvah of throwing the blood 4 times. The ka'avid mitzvah. But over here, going down, you can't say going down as a mitzvah. Abalacha lo yavid mitzvah. The lo yavid mitzvah. That's the change. Look inside the last line in Rashi. It's yes, going down is called poidish min ho'aveda. And the worst is, how are you poidish min aveda? By an aveda, by going down. So at best, you have a prishama aveda in a bad way. Al yedei aveda. Aval kiyu mitzvah enkan. So maybe Rabbi Eliezer will say, don't go down. Back in the Gemara. Let's go in the reverse. The last line of the Gemara in the Amid. At kan lekam Rabbi Yeshua Hassan, that we say shave al tasa adif, and therefore only put matan echad, elo, or the Bach says the Eloi. Let's go elo daf kuf amid beis. The loy ka'avad isura. The loy ka'avad isura. You're not directly doing an isur. Rabbi Yeshua says apply dam once. Did you do a sin? You didn't do the matan dalid, but you didn't do a sin. But over here, if you're going to stay on the tree, you can't say staying on the tree is nothing. Staying on the tree is an isur. Maybe it. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
how does this stem with Alter Rebbe's discussion on the difference between mitzvahs? Yeah.
So perfect. It fits Gavaldik. In other words, the point that what we just learned right now, here, non-action is a violation. Let's read inside the top Rashi. Over there, by not sprinkling, you're doing nothing. You're not doing anything. Sitting on a tree is called sinning. Let's read inside the Rashi. If you have in front of you the bowl of dam and you only put one, which is what Rabbi Yush, and you don't go further, that's called taka non-action. The Torah says, put it more. You did zero. Not sprinkling dam is doing nothing. Here, you are sitting. Sitting is you are mishtamish. It's different. So this is a violation. You can even argue you are doing a violation. So maybe Rabbi Yeshua will say, go down. Okay, right. Tanach, the second line from the top of the Amud. Echad ilalach, other details. Guys, we're learning a very important halacha right now, or the halacha is predicated, it's based on the following, that if a tree is completely dead, even if you break a branch, you did not violate koitzer. And based on that, if the whole reason why you may not be mishtamish be'ilin is beginning with you can't climb a tree because you might break a branch, if there's no issue with breaking a branch, then you can be mishtamish be'ilin. So Tanach, nevertheless, we learned that whether the ilin is wet or whether it's yavesh, in both cases, you may not be mishtamish. We don't differentiate. However, that there is an issue, mishtamish be'ilin, that's only belach, aval be'yavesh, then it is mutar. Then it is mutar. Because the tree is no longer living, now is this a contradiction? So we're going to have various ways to reconcile these two braises, not making them into a machloikes tanoim. Omar Rav Yehuda loikash. Excuse me. Kan, where we said the first one, that echad yavesh is asur, that's b'shegizoi machaliv. In other words, that the trunk is still capable of regenerating itself. There's chayas in there. The question is, why is that called yavesh? And that's why it's asur. The second brayso that says v'yavesh mutar is b'she'ena gizoi machaliv. Says the Gemara, gizoi machaliv yavesh kari solei. If there's any still life that will allow the tree to regenerate, that's not called yavesh, elo lekash. Kan b'maisach hama. The tree is dead. The issue is marasayin. What's marasayin? During the months of the year that all trees, during the winter, not in LA where there's always beauty, but when you go to New York, over there, all trees look dead. So if someone is going to climb up a dead tree, people won't know that it's dead. B'maisach hama, there's no marasayin. You see, kan b'maisach hama. The Maisach Chama is the second brayso. So you could be mishtamish be'ilin yavesh, because people see, this is yavesh, because there's no leaves on it, and the other trees have leaves. But kind of Maisach Shamim, there's a marasayin. No one will know that this tree is yavesh. All trees look yavesh, so that's why you may not use it. Even in Maisach Chama, how can you say you can climb a tree? Sometimes trees that are completely dried out, they won't regenerate. Some of them still have some product on it. There's some peta on it, and therefore, vaitin marasayin. If there's something on it, people will think that there is life in there. So it must be with the like a peta. But for nasi kinse, but the twigs will be dislodged, and we don't want people to see that you're dislodging twigs. So the Gemara says, "Bigaduda, you can only climb a dry tree when there's no peta on it, there isn't even twigs on it. It's just a narrow, thin tree. That where only there is there no issue." And when Rav once went to a village called Apastia, And there, he did not allow people to be mishtamish, even bigeduda, never use a tree, even though it was completely bare, it was just a bare trunk. So the Gemara says that that's something else. And we have this expression already above. We had this in Shabbos, we had this above. That what? That Rav biko matzav v'gada b'geder. Rav found an open valley and he made a fence. That means when Rav came to a place where people were very lenient with certain Isuri Derabanan, so Rav did not want for people to be noyeg with the emes, which is that this Isur, whenever it's dead and there's no marasayan and there's no confusion, Rav says if people will be allowed in any circumstance to use a tree, they're going to end up using other trees. So that's always, the pendulum swings back. When people are overly lenient, then you have to be overly machmer. Loi plug, bika matzah, and v'gada b'geder. Actually, in Shulchan Aruch, we paskin like this Rav. What's in Shulchan Aruch, we say today that asur lishtamish be'ilan, period. Because we are afraid that if people are going to say, this tree you could, that tree you can't, it's going to lead to people be mishtamish be'ilan that indeed you may not use. Okay.
So it seems to Rav that any Elon is asur, correct?
Rav is saying any Elon is asur, and we pass it like Rav. Okay, right. Amar Rami bar Abba. Now, if this is Rami bar Abba, just to make it clear, then we're going to have a whole beautiful Agadata, and the link is also going to be, because it's being stated by Rami bar Abba, so just a heads up, later in the Gemara it's going to be Rami bar Chama, but it should be corrected to Rami bar Abba as well. Amar Rami bar Abba Amar Rav. Guys, the first wide line. Amar Avasi, thank you. Amar Avasi. Amar Asur lo Adam sheyahalach al gabe yasavim b'Shabbos. Wow, guys, don't worry, we don't paskin like this. You're not allowed to walk on grass on Shabbos. Why? Because it says, and we're quoting a pasuk in Mishnah, va'atz beraglaim choyte. Va'atz is someone who acts forcefully with his feet, is a sinner. What does that refer to? It refers to, when you walk on grass, you're walking with your feet and you're walking with koyach, and you might uproot, like similar, you can't climb a tree, you might uproot a twig, you might uproot a branch, you might uproot a peta, you can't walk on grass. 1 second, says the Gemara, the second white line. Tanach adam mutalel chagav asav b'Shabbos. V'tanya idach asur. So the Gemara says like kasha. Let's start. Ha balachim, moist can get uprooted, and if that happens, you're violating. Ha b'yaveshim, like we just learned above, that if something is completely dried out, it won't regenerate. There's no chayas in it. That just because you are physically removing it from the ground, you're not violating. Here b'chlal, you're not doing it. Even if it were to happen, it's not an Isur D'Oraisa, so therefore you're allowed to walk on grass. Even balachim, there can be times, like Kasha, Rashi says that it's not about the grass won't get uprooted, but there are certain seeds in the grass, dafka summer, you don't want to move it to a different place. That is the issue, says Rashi. Kami, Maisak Shamim, where you don't have these seeds, and therefore you can walk. We're not afraid that you can uproot the grass itself. And you have these seeds. If you're wearing shoes is okay. Listen to this logic. If you're not wearing shoes, that means your toes are going to uproot the grass. Oh, there's depends what kind of shoes you have. But if we're speaking about a flat sole, that will there's lesser chance for a problem, but your toes, your feet, barefoot is a bigger problem. Even if you're wearing the soyem misane, if there are spikes, right? You have shoes that are meant to walk on snow, that's asur. That's going to chop the ground, it's going to uproot the grass. Even if both have ukse. However, the question is, how big are the grass? How tall is the grass? Long grass is problematic. It makes so much sense. Long grass. That you gave a Chassidish haircut. The lace shirach, it's very little. Even with the spikes, nothing will get uprooted. And the Gemara concludes, well, hold on. Let's take one big step back. This is your classical davar she'enes chavim. As long as it is not a psikresha, then for sure it's mutter, because we paskin like Rab Shimon. So everything that we learned until now was not based on Rab Shimon. But now that we paskin like Rab Shimon, then kula shari and azoi, we paskin in Shulchan Aruch, there is no issue with walking on grass.
Rabbi, didn't we discuss this in Masechtas Shabbos, where walking on the grass there was an idea of psikresha? Did we
No,
Was that ever discussed?
No.
I thought we said over there where there were spikes.
We learned about walking on sand is muktzah, unless you put the sand in the sandbox to play with. And here you could walk on the beach. That's because
over there, didn't we say if you have spikes or like women's shoes that are heels, spiky heels, that if you go into the thing, it's like it's usher.
Rabbi Shalom, we learned a Mishnah, we learned a sugya that there was a time that we were hiding from the Romans and we were wearing spiked shoes. That's a unique type of spiked shoes.
And they kill each other.
Thought that they're coming, and we ran out of the cave and we killed each other. And they made, from that one story, they made a takana that you can never wear spiked shoes. Remember, the Gemara asks, so it should be even in the weekdays because Ma'aseh Shehoya was on Shabbos, that whole sugya. That's not the type of spikes that we're talking about. Those were really spikes that you have nails protruding not only down onto the ground, but to the sides. And therefore, people can kill each other.
What about trees? Branches, trees and branches?
No, so one thing, climbing a tree, even though we paskin like Rab Shimon, that we may not climb a tree. That Isur was made, it's a gezerah, and then we're done. We're not allowed to climb a tree on Shabbos. We're not allowed to be mishtamish, even b'tzidei. That's important. Many people have hammocks or they have chairs. If it's hung on the branch, it's also for you to go on the hammock. If it's already hung from before Shabbos on a hook, so now the question is whether you can go in the hammock. The hammock is tzidei tzedadim. If it won't move the tree, then it's mutter. Let's go right. Now that we quoted Rami bar Abba Omar Avasi, that's here the change in girsa. For Omar Rami bar Abba, and I'm just going to read it inside. It says Chama. Omar Avasi, Chavra, this is going to be a beautiful piece of Agadah all the way to the bottom of the Amid. Let's go. It's prohibited for a man to force his wife into marital relations. As it says, we're quoting not only the same memra, but we're quoting the same pasuk. The pasuk of va'atz beraglayim. So atz means when you do something forcefully. So beraglayim is also an expression of having a tashmish. That va'atz beraglayim, forceful relations, obviously with one's wife. So that then even that is called a choyte. Va'amar Rabbi Yeshua ben Levi. This is a delicate topic. No one is a brute, God forbid. When you think about forceful, it means that the wife has to be completely willing. Whoever forces his wife, even though it's a dvar mitzvah, his children will have bad character, right? As the Alter Rebbe writes in Perek Beis, there it's speaking about kavana. Here we're speaking about the action affects the levushim of the neshama of the children. The neshama itself is not affected at all, but yet the levushim. What's the source? So it says over there in Mishlei that gam beloy das nefesh loy toiv. It's beautiful. Gam beloy das means that if there is no consent from the wife, so what's going to happen? The soul that you will bring down, and again, going back to Perek Beis, nefesh is the lowest part. Alter Rebbe says the neshama itself, sometimes you have in the courses of parents, the loftiest of neshamas as children. But the nefesh is going to be loy toiv. Tanya nami hachi. Gam beloy das nefesh loy toiv. What does that refer to? Then when it says, if a person is going to act with the force, he's called a sinner. You know what that refers to? That refers to boil v'shoina. The wife was willing for the bia v'shoina, and you have to be careful. Still, you have to make sure that there's no aspect of kfiyah. Hold on. Boil v'shoina is a good thing. Eini v'amar Rava. We learned this in Ida that haroitz alas is called ban of zacharim yivoil v'yishna. That's because when Isha's mazras tchila, your led is zachar, and mazras means ovulating, and Chazal link the woman's pleasure to her ovulation, to her being mazras. So the Gemara says loy kasha. You're right, kan ladas. If the woman consents, then boil v'shoina is a good thing. But kan our sugya, the concept that there should never be any kefiyah aspect is shaloi ladas. Even though the bia reshayna there was no kaifa, make sure for the bia shniya that there is still her consent. Says the Gemara Vayter. Amar Rabbi Shmuel bar Nachmani, either Amar Rabbi Yechanan or like the Messiah Sashas events, Amar Rabbi Yonasan. Hua. Call Isha Shetevas Baila Lidvar Mitzvah. If a woman is going to petition her husband to have relations, then they're going to have the most amazing children. This is a hemshech because that means she has the most das. She initiates. They're going to have children that are so good. Toivas means if she's asking to have relations. not koifa, but she's meaning she has the most level of consent.
Sounds like demanding.
Tevas can mean demanding. Yeah, good. The ilu demanding means that she's very interested. The ilu b'doyde shal Moshe ksiv. Right in the beginning of Devarim, when we're looking for character traits that are ideal for our judges to have, and unavoinim, chachma and bina, and das v'yeduim l'shiftechem. That's the Chabad. Get Chabadnik, as Moshe Rabbeinu said, for your tribes. Good. And it says, so what did we do? That this was what the ideal. V'ekach es rashi shiftechem. Who did we find? Anoshim chachamim. They had chachma. They had yeduim. But the word Nevinim is not written. Because Pasha, the people did not have this type of midah, this character. They were not developed as ideally, but you did the best you could. When it comes to Leah, and Leah was Toivas, that's your answer. See what happened over there. As it says, Leah to Yaakov. And she tells Yaakov, to me you're coming. Why? And in other words, she was Toivas. And what happened? That gave birth to Yisachar. Who was Yisachar? Particularly, B'nei Yisachar Yoidei Bina. Gavaldik Leitim. Lo Das Mayasi Yisrael. And Rasheim Masayim. There were 200 leaders, and all of the people followed these leaders that all came from the tribe of Yisachar that were imbued particularly with Bina. Gavaldik. How can you tell me that it is virtuous for a woman to be toivas? Isn't this part of the curses that Chava was cursed with? This is Eser Klalis Neskal Lachava Dichsiv El. Now we're going to go through that pasuk that we have in Parshas Bereshis, what God Almighty told Chava, El Ha'isha Amar, Harba Arbe, I will greatly increase. Quoting that part, Taiches, what's the double harba arbe elush tipidamim that came as a result of her failing? One is dam nida, which is difficult for a woman, and the one is dam psulim. Before the chait, there was no dam psulim, which is uncomfortable or sometimes painful for the woman. So that's first curse. Number two, when the pasuk goes on, itzvoinech, you're suffering. What does that refer to? That sar gidul banim. That refers to the anguish of raising the children. That Chava particularly was cursed with. Then when it says in the next word, Vihiroinech means childbearing, that refers to Tsar Ha'ibur. Asks the Ben Yehoyada, are we not going out of the order? Don't you first start? Let's read the next line. And then it says, Ve'etzev teil dibanim, with great etzev will you give birth to. That's Kamashmoy. That's very painful, having a child. So aren't we going out of the order, says Behoyada Gavaldik. He says that Chava was cursed, according to the Midrash, she already had with Adam, Cain and his twin, and Hevel and both twins before the Chait. Which means that the first pregnancy and childbirth was not painful. So chronologically, now that she was cursed, so first, the curse was that the Tsar Gidul Banim is going to be difficult. And then later, when she got pregnant with Shais, that was 130 years later. Then you had the Tsar Ha'ibur, that's Gavaldik, and then the Eitz of Teil Banim. Then when it says, Vaited, here's the Kasha, El Isheich, Tishu Kaseich, that you will crave your husband. So first of all, Malamed, that a woman is going to be Mishtoi Kekas Al Bailo, she's going to yearn to have marital relations, B'Shasha Yoitzel Aderech, when the husband is going on a trip. That's also to her disadvantage. She becomes needy. And he will dominate you. Malamed Shehoisha can only be Toivas Belev. But she by nature, she won't be Toivas Bepeh. It's the man that's Toivas Bepeh. And here, the Braisa says, Zu Mida Toiva Benashim. It ends up that her not being allowed to be Toivas Bepeh is actually something which is beautiful. So why are you telling me over here that if a woman is toivas, then she's going to have children with great midos? Being toivas is not modest. So the Gemara says, no, there's no contradiction. Ki ka'amrinon, when I said that if a woman is toivas, which indicates that there's no kfi at all, not that she's toivas bepen. The meratzia arutze kamei, that she begins to act in a certain way that he understands that she's interested. but she should not be toivas bepeh. Okay, now that we mentioned that the Braisa here begins, or Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi begins, that Esed Klolois Neskala Lachava, count, you're going to see we only had 7. We're missing 3. Frag the Gemara, Hani Sheva Havion. So Ki Ased Avdimi Yamar, there are another 3 that he did not write. Number 1 is that she is Atufa Ke'evel, that she's wrapped like a mourner. Wrapped like a mourner means that she covers her hair. And here you see clearly from our Gemara, all women don't need the Gemara. They'll tell you, that it's a curse. The fact that they have to cover their hair after they're married is something difficult for them. That's the next curse. We're going to the final 3. So number 9, Umenuda Mikol Adam. She's cut off from all people. We'll see what that refers to. And 10th, V'chavusha mi beis asurim. She's stuck in a jail. What does it mean? She's Menuda Mikol Adam. What does it mean that she's cut off from all people? If it means that she's not allowed to have yichud, well, that's not only a curse for Chava, that's also with Adam. Iyunami, that's the whole end of Masechtas Kedushin. Asur le yichud. Elet means, no, not yichud. A man, biblically, is allowed to marry 2 wives at the same time. A woman never can be married at the same time to 2 different husbands. That's called that she's menuda mikol adam. That was the curse. Again, that means that prior to Chava, that would have been permitted. And it's interesting that the Gemara doesn't even touch the meaning of Chavusha bebeis asurim. Chavusha bebeis means that, like Rashi says, Kavuda bas melech pnima. People quote that just if ERUVIN daf kuf says that's a klala. How beautiful! It's not beautiful. It's a curse. Okay. Now we're going to go to more.
What's the curse?
Tznius?
What's the curse? What's the curse? Tznius?
The fact that she feels that she cannot go out. Women, mamish did not go out. You learned that Rambam, women stayed at home the whole time.
Yeah, but how do you see that as universally applicable curse today? What is the application?
Because the world pre-Mashiach is breaking out of all these curses. The minhag ha'olam changed.
You're saying
whether it's kosher or not, you can debate.
What, feminist rights? What's feminist rights? Like what's the?
Okay. Women up until 70, 80 years ago, they stayed home the whole time. Many countries, if a woman went out at night, she would not come home. She would get kidnapped. She's outdoors. Let's go weiter. All right. The Masnei Sotanim. You know, the Chassam Sofer asks, why don't women say Kiddush Levana? I'll give you an example. Even though I know it's a, first of all, okay, the Alter Rebbe says Kiddush Levana is a mitzvah asay shazman gerama. There are others that say it's not even that. The Chassam Sofer says because kfuda bas malach pnima. It's not even modest for a woman to go to her backyard to say Kiddush Levana. That's called she's chavusha bebeis asurim. Now, the Masnei Sotanim, nach 3, megadela seir kelilis. Growing long hair is a curse. Lilis is the original demon. We're not even, when we say her name, not in the context of learning, we call her, which we don't want to do. The image of Lilis is she has very long hair. So that she has to grow long hair. And number 2, from the additional 3, v'yosheves umashtenes mayim kibehema, that when she urinates, she sits like a female mule. Certain animals crouch, and that's a curse. It's a lot more convenient, right? You're going on a trip for a guy, mainly you have to go, you go behind a tree. A woman, it's a whole parsha. And number 3, v'nasas karla baila, because of the dinei tznius, the man should be on top, the woman should be on bottom. So that's a curse. She's like a pillow, right? She's supporting her husband. Now, the question is, if you have these 3, why didn't Rabbi Yitzchak bar Avdimi, right? Why didn't he mention them? Ve'idach, no, these 3 are all a shevach. Long hair is beautiful for her. The fact that she's yosheves umashtenes, that's tznius, that's beautiful for her. The fact that her position is under, she works less, also good for her. That malfeinu is from the words aluf, from teacher, right? That we can learn from the animals of the earth, and we can learn from the oif hashamayim yichakmenu. So malfeinu from behemoths. Chachma we can get from the birds, says Rabchia, Pasuk in Iyov, that malfeinu behemoths. What do we learn from the animals? Zuprei, that refers to a female mule, shekayras umashtanas mayim, that when she has to urinate, she crouches, she sits down, and that's something that is positive, that's modest. Oif hashamayim yichakmenu. We should learn from the birds going back to our sugya, that before the roosters are very busy. Before they have relations, they're first mephias, and only then are they boil. They seduce, they put their mate, they appease their mate. And the kids are coming back over here. He's just speaking about the Yeshevas, so Mashtanas Mayim Kibahema. It's getting late, and my battery is finishing. We'll stop over here, and we'll begin next year with the conclusion of Moedidika statements regarding how the Tardner girl, how the rooster appeases the hen. It's Mamash Gavaldik, and coming back. All of this is coming back to the sugya that a person should be very careful never to be Yachuv Ishtoi, even Lidvar mitzvah, God willing, to be continued. I'm going to have to plug that in.
When is the Siyum?
Siyum is going to be Tuesday or Wednesday, and God willing, Sunday night, maybe at 6, maybe even earlier. Maybe at 6, we're going to learn the Rebbe Siyum. That's in Lekut Sichos Chelik Yud Aleph. Okay, guys, almost there.